The image that you'll see inside of Dr. King is one of resolve, contemplation, and focus. It's not the face of distraction or fear. He is intent. He's solemn. His face, his eyes are fixed. Now, since we do this often, I wonder if Dr. King were here today with us, would he do as we do and critique the selfie? How many of us do that? I know I do. We see an image of ourselves and we curl up our noses and say, oh, not good. In an age of digital technology, it's easy to hit delete and wait for a better day, a better hair day, better light, and in my case, a better face. Would Dr. King like the image we've chosen of him? I sure hope so. But I think a better question would be this. Would Dr. King like the school we've named after him? Would he smile and he'd say, not bad? Or would he curl up his face and say, you could do better? I really actually have often wondered this. If he walked our halls, if he sat in our classrooms, if he watched our games and listened to our conversations, how would he evaluate us? Evaluating schools is an issue that Sacramento school districts and communities kick around all the time, asking and wondering, how do you judge a school? What is the benchmark of excellence? This too is a good thing, and it's right. In 2007, I took our cross-country teams to Birmingham and Montgomery, Alabama, to compete and also to see the sites that were in those cities that Dr. King and Rosa Parks and many others made famous. That experience captured my imagination, not just of the past, but my hope for the present as well. For 11 years now, as Mr. West mentioned, I've been on a quest to understand Dr. King at a much deeper level. Despite dozens of books read, I'm not done, but this one thing I know. However complex King was, no matter how nuanced or layered his perspective on civil rights was, his life really can be reduced to one thing, and I think that one thing is what he'd use to evaluate our school. If he walked our halls, if he listened to our conversations, if he sat and ate lunch with us. In early 1956, as the Montgomery bus boycott was just getting started, Martin Luther King was worn down by weeks of death threats and admitted that he was nearing the end of his strength right there at the beginning of the battle. Unable to sleep one night, he made a pot of coffee and he sat at his kitchen table in the middle of the night, frightened, lonely, tired. Later, he would write about what happened that night. And he said these words, "The words I spoke to God that midnight are still vivid in my memory. I'm here taking a stand for what I believe is right. But now I'm afraid. I'm at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I've come to the point where I can't face it alone." He went on, "At that moment, I experienced the presence of God like never before. It seemed as though I could hear the quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, 'Stand up for justice, stand up for truth, and God will be at your side forever.' And almost at once, my fears began to go." One thing we try to emphasize with our students here at King High is that their lives matter. Each one, created in the Imago Dei, we greet on the doorstep of adulthood and try to usher them into maturity, equipped for the one life that they get to live. What will that one life be like? What will be the pillars of belief and conviction upon which their lives will stand? If Dr. King were here, how would he answer that question? What would he say about his life? What would he say about what he was all about? If he walked this campus, our halls, and listened to our conversations, and sat down to eat lunch with us, what would he say? It was just days after that moment at midnight there in his kitchen that a bomb with murderous intent exploded on the front porch of his home, leaving a gaping hole and broken windows in its wake. While no one was hurt, thankfully, everyone was angry. The police arrived and a barricade was set up to keep the swirling crowd fixed at revenge at bay. King stepped out onto that porch that night, and into the jangling discord he said these words, "We cannot solve this problem through retaliatory violence. Remember the words of Jesus, 'He who lives by the sword will perish by the sword.' No matter what they do to us, we must make them know that we love them." Jesus' words echo across the centuries, "Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you." This is what we must live by. We must meet hate with love. In South Africa today, They are familiar with a Bantu word. That word is Ubuntu. It comes from a saying that essentially says, a person is a person through other persons. Ubuntu declares that we are not alone, that we are designed to connect with others, that mankind is better off when we live in community with one another. The great South African leader, Nelson Mandela, spoke of Ubuntu, and he practiced it in his own life. And he described it this way: Ubuntu does not mean people should not address themselves. The bigger question is this: are you going to live in such a way that enables the community around you to improve? In 1956, when the Montgomery bus boycott had been successfully completed, King spoke of what he called a beloved community, and it had hints of Ubuntu. The end is redemption, he said, of the budding civil rights movement. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit, it is this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this type of understanding that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of men. What if he walked these halls? What if he listened to our conversations? What if he sat down and ate lunch with us? What if Dr. King were alive and here today? We might ask him many things about his views on civil rights, but really I think he'd ask us just one question. How well are you doing at loving one another? You see, King had just one life, as do you and do I, and he lived it well. Not perfectly, but well. He lived it with purpose, even if it took an encounter with God at his kitchen table to bring him to it. But say what you want to say about that one life. His life really came down to one thing: love. From that rock of love flowed the rivers of justice, equality, and reconciliation. The light of love, King argued, would dispel the dark shadows of hatred. Well, it's been almost 19 years since we first opened these doors, and on a day like today, it's good to consider again the singular call King gave to each and every one of us. A celebration like today should force us to reflect and ask ourselves, how well are we living our one life? Both as members of the King High School community and also as Americans. How well are we doing at loving one another? Do we love the camouflage kid as much as we do the AP Scholar with 4.0? Do the down and outers get as much love as the up and comers? Do we love those to the left of us and to the right? Do we hear the echoes of Dr. King as we walk these halls? He's calling us, love one another. Love even your enemies. Sacrifice for others. Live in community. Seek ways to improve that community. 50 years ago this April, Martin Luther King's life tragically ended too early. His beloved community not yet realized. A half century later, there is much to be done here and in the country that he loved. But while Ubuntu, American style, may still be a way off, and while there's still a mountain to climb, this fact should not deter us from striving on toward that distant land. May our resolve be strengthened. May we not be distracted or fearful. May our eyes be fixed and our hearts convicted. And may we be reminded of that call of Dr. King's every time that we see the mural inside. That our one life is best lived when it's lived in service and love toward those we are inextricably bound together with. And if and when that day comes, on that day, if we could imagine Dr. King walking these halls and listening to our conversations and sitting down to eat lunch with us, then I'm sure he'd say, well done. Thank you.